Everybody for coming to this talk that I have today. We are going to talk about security awareness maturity assessments. So hopefully you guys get something from this, and if not, I have tons of other things to teach you. So like I said, my name is Rose. I am a governance, risk, and compliance manager at a company called CISO. We do red, blue, and GRC services. I own the governance and compliance service line, meaning everything that falls under that really large GRC umbrella is my responsibility. I oversee the delivery of it. I have a master's in cybersecurity, a master's in advanced networking, and I just passed. So, 15 years in IT, and then the last 9 in security. So. I have been spending quite a long time in IT, a lot of different things, and so over the years I've really enjoyed teaching others the things that I've picked up along the way. Additionally, shameless plug, guys, I do a lot of public speaking, so if you are interested in governance, risk, and compliance, I have tons of talks available. You can get to them through my LinkedIn page, done podcasts, and a whole bunch of things relating to ISMS and third-party risk management. And then if you are not familiar with setting up an entire security awareness program, I have a talk on that too. So today we're just focusing on maturity assessments, whereas there's another talk available if you need some help setting up your whole program. All right, so security awareness programs, let's level set there first. Do any of you in here have your own security awareness program that you run or contribute to? Few hands? Okay, great. So when we talk about security awareness, that program is fundamental to what we're doing at an organization. There's a lot of purposes behind it. Maybe we're trying to give better training to people. We're focusing on certain topics, computer, network, physical, whatever it may be. But ultimately, we are trying to change the behavior and the culture and facilitating these really great conversations with our workforce. Because ultimately, we want to have a reduction in the risk related to human behavior. So security awareness typically has the wrap of, you know, this is a compliance activity. Really, we're trying to reduce the risk associated with our humans within our workforce. So we do this through security awareness. Now, your program is normally split into 2 different areas. You have your program, you know, it's the compliance and regulatory aspects of it. You have your C-level support. You maybe have your governance, whatever your governance may be with other departments. And then you have metrics. So that is what is setting up your program. The other side of your program is training. So you have training and activities that you give to your workforce. And you also have social engineering. So from there, you have several training types. So you have web-based, you may do in-person correspondence, or you may do behavioral or role or group-based training. So program and then your training, and that's coming together to develop your program or level set your program. So security awareness, level setting there. Now we're going to talk about maturity assessments, because that is the main purpose of this talk. So maturity assessments, not here to say, hey, go out and get a third party to do it, not saying you need to do all this jump through hoops to get maturity assessment done for your program. What I want to do is enable you guys to take this information and go conduct your maturity assessment against your own program and understand how your program is truly operated. So maturity assessments, they look at your current state, they evaluate how you're sitting, what you're doing, what you're not doing, and figuring out where you want to go. Do you want to have, you know, a level 3 maturity, a level 4 maturity? Do you have no maturity and you don't actually realize it because maybe your program's very immature? All of this is going to play a key role into your maturity assessment. So when I do maturity assessment, I am normally looking for 4 components. I'm looking at how you execute the program. I'm looking at your staffing and your metrics. So those 4 things I am normally looking at as they relate back to your program and your training. So we have a breakdown here. Breakdown is governance. What exactly am I talking about? Because that could be kind of vague. So do you have a policy? Do you have a standard? Do you have some sort of strategic plan? All of these things are going to support your program, and your governance is going to need to be established to be able to run your program effectively. I will tell you now, if you do not have governance when a maturity assessment is being done, you likely will be a stage 1 type maturity because you don't have anything to govern your program. That is what governance is there for. It's going to drive all the things that you need to do. Next, you have execution. Who's executing on your program? Is your workforce actually picking up the information? What kind of training is available? All of these things play a key role into how this program is actually executing and how it's being administered within the environment. Oh, my apologies, did not mean to click next. Next, staff. So how many of you that actually run your own program are doing it in a dedicated fashion or part-time? So raise of hands, dedicated to your program right now. One person? So most programs operated in a percentage capacity. 20%, whatever it may be. Okay, well, you're going to have likely an immature program because it's not getting the support and the resources that it needs. So when a maturity assessment is done, you're looking at, do you have the qualified staff? Do you have the people you need to run it? Are those people educated on how to administer your program? Do they have soft skills? Another key aspect here, with security awareness, it's not all, you're sending the training out, policies and LMS and doing these sort of things. You need certain soft skills to administer the program and communicate with your workforce. So that's another thing when it comes to qualified staff. And then finally, metrics. Are you understanding how your program operates? Are you taking metrics and going back into continual improvement? Are the only metrics that you're gathering is whether or not everybody completed their training? Because if so, that's not good metrics of how your program is operating. There's a lot that filters into there. Okay, I see a head shaking back there. Yeah, that's the only metrics you do. Yeah, so a lot of times people have the metrics of everybody did their training, the auditors come in. Let's show that everybody did their training, and that sort of counts for their metrics. Well, that's not really going to show how your program's operating, right? You need to understand, look at your IR processes. How many business email compromises are you having? How many phishing attempts? Of those people with phishing and business email compromises, are they getting the right training? Are you reporting on it? Are you doing all these other things? So the metrics really play a key part here in making sure that you cycle them back into your continual improvement. So if you do have a lot of business email compromise, are you adjusting your training and making sure those repeat offenders or your problem kids are taking the training that they need to? So a lot to consider there. To add another tricky aspect into your program, or the things that you need to consider for your maturity assessment, is compliance and regulatory. So we've talked about, at a very vague level, you have security awareness programs that have your program and your training. You may get influenced by compliance or regulatory factors. Those are a lot of things to take into consideration for your program. You need to have the metrics, you need to have staffing, you need to do X, Y, and Z of the things, and the compliance and regulatory factors make it even more complicated. For ISO 27001, you have to have the training, you have to show that they have the training. You may have to demonstrate that they signed off on the information security policy that may be incorporated into the security awareness. For NIST 853, there's a whole domain, awareness and training, for your security awareness program. So lots of things to consider there when you're building your program and making sure that you're evaluating the maturity of your program against what's applicable to your environment. Out of the people running their programs, do you guys have any regulatory factors right now that are driving your programs? What about you? What do you have driving your program? Mm-hmm.
We're using PCI and also using the benchmark.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody else?
GDPR.
Oh, that's everybody's favorite. Any other regulatory drivers in here? I work with a lot of environments. Oh, in the back. Oh, HIPAA, security rule and privacy rule. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I work with a lot of clients that have a lot of different regulatory factors like there, and you start stacking them up, They get more and more and more complex. So definitely take that into consideration for your maturity assessment. All right, a really useful tool, if you have not seen this, I am not going to tell you guys to reinvent the wheel, because if you have not already researched it, there's 50 million maturity models out there. And in particular, SANS has one for your security awareness program. They already did all the hard work for you. You just got to go to their website, get this chart, get the... So we do have the security awareness maturity model here. I did steal it from SANS, but I did give them credit. So you guys can go to that link. Now, the maturity model is in 5 levels. You have non-existent. You're not doing anything. Your users don't even have any idea what is security awareness. Don't open the emails. They don't know anything. Then you have compliance focused. And this is where a lot of organizations that I work with normally sit. They have people that sign off on the policy. They maybe take training once a year. They meet the minimum requirements that's expected of them for their compliance focused program. So they aren't doing anything more than that. Maybe they want to, but maybe they don't have the buy-in for it. Then you have promoting awareness and behavioral change. So now you're going on that uphill trend. You have your security team. They're actively looking at people. They're identifying human risk and associating that back into their program. You have the users that are starting to acknowledge the security awareness habits that you want them to have. They're maybe getting a hold of security and doing the things that you're hoping they would take from the training. You have long-term and cultural change. So big one here, the cultural change. That's what you really want to see. So going back to the purpose of security awareness, you want to see that reduction in risk related to your humans. Well, when you start hitting that 4th layer, you're going to see that cultural change and really start to see that reduction in the human risk. Additionally, that human risk should be accounted for when you're doing your other risk management type functions to further reduce it. And then metrics. So going back to continual improvement, you have the continual improvement for your program. You're able to demonstrate that through your metrics. And these aren't metrics like, oh, everybody did the training, everybody did this. These are very complex metrics to put you in that state of continuous improvement. All that information is within the infographic in that link. You could just Google it. It comes up very quick. So they've already done the work for you. You can leverage this resource to do your own maturity assessment. All right, so far we've talked about the different components that I've looked at. We've talked about a maturity model. So I'm going to tell you how I normally execute a maturity assessment. You could take it or leave it or modify it however you like, but this is what I normally do. So for execution, I figure out who do I want to talk to. So you have stakeholders for your program. Your stakeholders may be compliance, maybe HR, your security team, anybody that is invested in that program. Maybe you want to talk to management and see what their perspective is how the security program is operating. Another stakeholder you may want to talk to are the users. Are the users getting any benefit from the training? Because a lot of times what I see is a disconnect between the people administering the program and the people taking the program. So whenever you have security awareness, you're supposed to market security awareness to your users. You want them to buy, invest in the skills that were. So why not talk to them and make sure, see what their perspective is. Is it, they're just getting all this email and it's not really beneficial for them? Well, now you know that that's not really working for your org. Review provided documents. So not everybody's going to love to do this. I personally love to do this. This is why I work in governance, risk, and compliance. But you need to look at the policy. You need to look at standards. You need to look at the plan. If those things are available. If they are not available, then obviously you can't look at it. But you already know they'll have probably a level 1 maturity, or you'll have a level 1 maturity. Review the provided training. Again, you want the users to invest in these skills. You have to look at the training. You can't just rely like, oh, yeah, you have the training. That's not going to be good. You've got to look at the training and see if it's actually beneficial. Then you want to prep your interview questions. So don't go to your interviews or whoever you're talked to and have an ad hoc conversation. You want to get the most out of their time and your time. So prep some interview questions in advance. Again, SANS already did a lot of that heavy lift for you. A lot of those questions you could easily get from that graphic that I pointed you to. You'll want to determine how you record your responses. I know this seems like a wacky one to put in here. After many, many years doing all sorts of assessments, I have learned, figure out how you like to write, whether it's OneNote, a spreadsheet, a Word document, whatever it is, just know that in advance. And then finally, understand the compliance and regulatory factors, because ultimately that is what the program's trying to achieve. They're trying to first hit those compliance drivers because that's likely going to have a business impact. If you work in healthcare, they're going to be concerned about HIPAA. If you're going after all these other certifications like ISO or whatever, those are going to have business imperatives. So make sure you understand the compliance and regulatory drivers. Now we have governance. So this is where I start to break it down a little bit more for you guys. You'll see that we have stage 1 all the way through 5 on here. Starting at the top, you have no awareness program. Across the board, every area that we're going to look at, no awareness program, no observable actions when we hit that stage 1. Compliance focused, employees are a little unsure of the policies. If a policy does exist, it's only there to satisfy the compliance requirements. So say you wrote up a policy, you got it signed off, and really it's just, hey, we'll do the training annually, and you're satisfying what the audit or whatever is going to expect of you. Then we hit stage 3. This is where you see the actual improvements start to happen. You have a plan. You know what your program's trying to do, and you have leadership support. So big item there, leadership support. Your program is only going to be as successful as your leaders are bought into it. So that top-down approach is key here. And then long-term, your program's actively reviewed and updated on an annual basis. So it's not good enough to just have the plan. You want to make sure the plan is actively reviewed, you're continuously improving it, and then making sure that that's available to whoever it needs to be available to. Next, we have execution. Again, no observable things happening for stage 1 here. But stage 2, you have limited support. Your leadership may perceive security as a technical issue. How many of you guys have been in an environment where you don't necessarily have security awareness in place, but your leadership's all for throwing new technologies or tools onto your infrastructure to fix the issue? Maybe it's better email protections, maybe it's a SIM, maybe it's whatever, and they're thinking that fixes the issues when really you're still going to have the human risk regardless of the technology that you put in place. So if you guys are experiencing that, that's indicating you're at a stage 2 maturity. Your leadership's not bought into the human risk factor yet. They're giving you money for the tools, and you're so stage 3, the leader winning the program, they know their top human risk. Security awareness is considered a part of the overall security effort. So big item here. I was recently a part of a meeting. The team recognized that we were getting a lot of smishing. So we had this special meeting, we talked about all the security issues, and we identified, oh man, we have a lot of users getting smishing. Wouldn't you know, the next day we send out a newsletter. Say, hey users, here's smishing, here's the things that you need to know about. And so now we're identifying these human risk relating to technology that we maybe have in place. We're seeing it on our logs and our trends and all these other things, but now we're taking action. We're saying, before this gets out of hand, we're giving you training, and we're talking to you, especially the ones that are getting the most frequent smishing attempts. Then you have long-term. So the leadership believes in and invested in the long-term support. Again, leadership buy-in is key here. Recently had a meeting called a management review. If any of you have a ISMS in place from ISO 27001, management review is key here. So management review, you sit down, you look at everything that's happening in your program. That's where you get your management buy-in. We had a very great conversation around what's going on within our program, and in particular, what's going on with our human risk. And they really were invested in the conversation. What can we do to fix the human risk? What can we do to resolve this situation? They're demonstrating they're very bought in through the actions that they're doing. Staffing. All right, so I think we said we only had one person that's in here, and the rest of you are kind of part-time. put a newsletter out or a couple hours annually. So, stage 2, you have a part-time person here. So I get to it when I get to it type attitude, or maybe you have other responsibilities. Stage 3, you have a program lead dedicated to the program. I haven't seen many people other than one in here that have a program lead assigned to it. A lot of organizations struggle with this because, as we all know, you wear a lot of hats. You have a lot of things that you have to do, and just getting that buy-in has always been really challenging. Then for stage 4, you have multiple FTEs. I've never seen that personally, and if you have, I'd be curious as your thoughts there. But stage 4, you have multiple full-time employees assisting with this. Then finally, metrics. So for metrics, stage 1, again, you're not doing anything. Stage 2, number of users signing your acceptable use policy or other governance, or maybe number of users completing the annual training. Promoting awareness, stage 3, you're measuring that human risk, and you're measuring phishing exercises. So maybe you've implemented a tool, and you're able to see who's your biggest offenders, and you're having them doing repeat training, and that's going up to your risk management committee or whoever. Long term, you have a program lead actively updating leadership monthly. So remember, leadership's really bought into the program, and now you're giving them those metrics to support what you're doing. Then we have stage 5. So metrics are collected, and they're often automated. So now you're not having to do anything for them. They're just kind of generating on themselves. And then the metrics are integrated into your security frameworks. So everything that you're doing within your security program, you have these metrics integrated, and you're understanding how they're impacting your security awareness, your human risk, whatever you're trying to measure. So now we did all that work. You sat down, you had your interviews, you recorded your answers, you understand where your maturity is. What do you do with all that information? Well, this is what you do. You develop a roadmap to your desired maturity level. So let's say that you are a stage 2. You only do the compliance things. Well, maybe you're going to develop your roadmap to stage 3. And fun fact, that SANS infographic that I showed you guys has steps to get to the next. Again, you can go to that document and it'll give you a little bit of insight. Determine your budget if you need one. So if you need a tool to help with your LMS, maybe you have been manually doing your security awareness training, and that's no longer sufficient, and it pans out in the results. So you determine your budget. Maybe you just say, we need some sort of tool, and you do a little bit of research here. Next, you determine your capacity requirements for resources. So this is a little bit assumed in the budget, but I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper here. If you are going to need support with outside departments, maybe HR, maybe compliance, maybe whoever, as part of the project planning, you really should identify how many hours do you need from them. Do you need like 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week, a couple hours a year? What is that number that you need assistance with them? Because what you don't want to happen, which is going to cause bad relationships, is that you build this whole project plan and you assume that they're going to help you and you force them to do work that they weren't prepared for. So get prepared, show that you're a good business partner, and just make sure that you understand how much time they can devote to this program. And then, most importantly, management buy-in. Huge one here. I will harp on it 50 million times. Management buy-in for anything that you do in security is key. So I know that's challenging to say, but if you take the management buy-in perspective, compare it against your human risk. If we mature from a level 2 to a level 3, what does this do to our human risk? Does it reduce it by 10%? And are we having a return on investment of saving $100,000? Are we doing this and it's having an impact? So it's not good enough that you get the plan together, that you say, oh, we should do this. You need to demonstrate to management the return on investment here in terms that they understand. So we got through the maturity assessment. There's tons of things there, lots and lots and lots of steps. But let's walk through one. And it's a super, super quick exercise because I think I only have 5 minutes. All right. Do any of you guys watch The Office? Great. That's one of my favorite shows. I'm glad you guys watch that one. All right. So Mifflin with Michael Scott. They have governance, but a policy only addresses their ISO 27001 requirements. They have execution, trainings once a year. That's all they do. Leadership is minimally bought in, so Michael's like, yeah, you just do the thing. I don't know what you're talking about, but yeah, go ahead and do it. Users sign an information security policy and an acceptable use policy, so you have them doing that. You have no dedicated staff, and your only contain the results of the annual training and maybe the policy sign-offs. So, what do you guys think I rated them as based on those quick bullets? 2, woohoo! You guys are right. Nailed it. You got compliance. So it's not as hard as it seems. There's a lot of like steps and things like that in there. I promise you resources are online. It's just a matter of kind of pulling it together and having the time to do it. If you are trying to figure out how much time you need to dedicate to this, if you're very familiar with your program and how it operates, you could probably dedicate 5 hours of time to this. It's a quick exercise, but you have to make sure that you have people bought in to interview with you and have the dialogues. And that is it. I have Twitter, LinkedIn, and you guys can contact me through email if you need any sort of support or assistance or understanding, you know, how to really get started more than what's contained in here. So with that, any questions? Oh, I do have something to give away. So whoever does have a question, woohoo, what is this? A lockpick kit in the back. Presentation software? It's Prezi. Prezi? Mm-hmm. So it's mixed. It depends what you're trying to accomplish. So if we're talking for security awareness, you can make a case like, all right, so you're managing 30 risks on your register relating to some sort of human activities happening. Tie that in there, and how much time is resources to be able to work on those risks. So say you have those 30, and for each of those risks, they're having to spend 5 hours of time execution, doing whatever those things are, and then you're at 100 hours, 30 risks, and bring that to management so they're understanding. But additionally, if you are using a compliance framework, leverage that as well. So I'll go back to the ISO 27001 example. A big component there is non-conformities against your ISMS. So if you do a corrective action process and you don't root cause analysis, you're not going to meet the intentions of that. So if you have an audit coming up and you have multiple non-conformities for something related back to security awareness, auditors going to be running your ISMS in the way you should because you're not following your corrective action process. That's another way that you can do it. The management's not going to want you to lose that certification if you're not able to stick to your processes, but you got to tee up the language just right for them. Not sure if that fully answers your question, but all right. I do think that I'm at time. Oh, yes.
One of the slides you talked about the leadership looking at technical solutions, should be technical solutions to security awareness, and email being the primary vector for attacks these days. I've seen in the information security world, discussions about having putting people through this security awareness training. We shouldn't have to be doing that as a failure on our side for securing a system. So I don't know if you've got any comment on that.
So is your question having people taking training around email security?
Yeah, people, again, I've seen the conversations, and this is not leadership of corporations. This is actually in the information security world. That no, we shouldn't have to submit people to this.
Yeah.
Security awareness training. We should be doing a better job at securing things so they can click on whatever they want.
Yeah, it's half and half. So you should be enabling your infrastructure to have those technology components that, is preventing it in the first place, but you also want to be able to have them doing the things that they need to do to keep the environment secure, because ultimately what it boils down to is you're trying to keep the information secure within that environment by reducing that human risk. My thoughts with security awareness, and we don't really dig into it as part of this presentation, I don't like traditional security awareness trainings. I think they are horrible. They're not the right thing for our users. The right thing for the users, identify what kind of training works for them. Do your users do better with in-person? Do they do better with videos? Do they do better with whatever? And figure that out, because that sort of training is what's going to help reduce that human risk. You understand what kind of training they need, and you're making sure that they're getting it. Obviously, that gets more complex with the larger organizations that you have, but if you have a smaller environment and you're able to support that, I love having one-on-one conversations with our employees that maybe don't understand security, and now they're getting to know me, Rose, and security, and being able to tie security back to the things that they need to do. And you foster really great relationships that way. But I absolutely don't think we should be torturing people with the security awareness training that is available, and we should be making sure that our technology supports them doing their jobs. Any other questions? It will be.